what's coming up next on the Create Happy Now podcast with the return of one of my VIP guests, Michelle Mirpour. She has some exciting adventures to tell us about her 8-day silent retreat, Eat, Pray, Love style in India. And we also talk about how she loved her life as she knew it to start her incredible transformational journey and her words of wisdom as a holistic lifestyle transformational coach for starting yours.
I booked a one-way ticket on Christmas Day. I flew out the very next day.
Crazy.
Yeah, to do an 8-day silent meditation retreat where you are in complete silence. And when they say silent, you are not to come into contact with anyone. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this 8 days? That's a long time. And I remember posting something on Facebook and telling my friends, just so you all know, I'm in this part of India now and I'm going to go into silent meditation and it's going to be for over a week and love to talk. And I remember everyone saying, good luck with that.
Get some duct tape.
Yeah, exactly. How are you going to manage that? And the first 2 nights, I had nightmares. And I don't have nightmares.
Wow.
And it's because you don't have any distractions. But on the 3rd day, I had no nightmares. It wasn't as uncomfortable sitting for long periods of silence like it was before. And I just felt so content. After that, I was never the same person again. Just when I thought, I've had enough change and transformation to last me a lifetime.
There's more.
There's more because this is life. Without change and without adversity and without problems and challenges, how are we going to grow? I went through all of that. Long story short, my journey ended up not being 2 or 3 weeks. I ended up coming back home to the States 8 months later.
Welcome to the Create Happy Now podcast, dedicated to helping you start your journey to discover true happiness. Join me, your host, Susan Blanton, weekly as we explore the transformation stories and words of wisdom from our masters of happiness with tips you can start applying today to create happy now. I have Michelle Mirpour back on the show again. Michelle is a holistic lifestyle transformational coach. She empowers women to become whole, organized, and balanced to be able to live the life they've always envisioned. She is currently coaching female entrepreneurs to build their legacies by launching their superpower gifts into the world. She also has an amazing Eat, Pray, Love story that we will definitely get into here shortly. But thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Susan, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about your transformational story. Where did you begin and what really got you to the point where you're like, I've got to really just clean house and start over?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. It actually, when you just asked me that, it immediately took me back to that place. And it's a place that I haven't been in a while. But whenever I have to think about the story or tell the story again, I go back to, it doesn't bother me anymore. It used to early on.
Yeah.
But I go back and relive what that was like. The point where I thought to myself, enough is enough. I have to make a change because I'm not happy. And how much longer am I going to live this unhappy life? This farce of a life. And, I need to make a change. And so the way it started for me was basically growing up in a household where everything just had to be perfect. And I tried, very hard. And sometimes I didn't have to try very hard, but other times I had to try very hard because it was very difficult, pleasing my parents, just coming home with perfect scores all the time in school, doing everything right and following their orders. And, I didn't have a whole lot of freedom. When I wanted to escape that, I made the decision of marrying very young. I was only 23. What did I know? I just knew that I wanted a little independence. I wanted to get away from that household of control and of, perfectionism and always trying to please my family. But
I did the same thing. I'm like, you're telling my story so far. So,
oh my gosh, that's too funny. And I love sharing this story. Like I said, it doesn't bother me anymore when I have to go back and share it, because I know ultimately it really helps other people to hear it, especially other people who might still be in that space. And I thought, oh, okay, so this is the ticket. I'm going to leave my parents' house, and I'm going to have a little bit of freedom, and I'm going to be with someone. We're going to have fun, and we're going to travel. And I ended up with someone who was absolutely controlling and possessive, and it was horrible. Talk about the example of, the fish jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. And that's exactly what I did to myself. And it was no better. It was no better. And I realized it, unfortunately, 7 months into the marriage, that it was just horrible. But, when I finally had the courage to tell my parents that I wasn't happy, because of course, I knew that they were going to say to stick it out and suck it up and stay there, and divorce was not acceptable, and I could not give up. And that was that.
That's another belief that we've all been fed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I was just, crushed, thinking that, okay, I'm now on my own, and maybe it's given my parents, certainly I had grown a little bit during that process, and it's given my parents a little bit of time to change their ways and their thought process around everything. But no, it was the same thing again. And that threw me into this spiral of, I can't trust my parents even, they don't have my back. And here I am living with someone who is just absolutely making me miserable. And I can't even go to my parents for help. So what did I do? I stayed in the marriage for 4 years after that. Mm-hmm. I was also at the time in a career where, although I was successful and I was good at it, it was not really my true calling in life. So here I am in a marriage that's not making me happy, a career that's not making me happy, no support system because I thought my family would be supportive, did not want to go to my friends because they just didn't have the same life experiences, and I didn't feel like they could give me the advice that I needed. I needed people older, I was pretty young, and I needed people older, and I didn't have any coaches or mentors at the time to help me through making the right decision. So that's why I had turned to my parents. And so I was really disappointed that they weren't going to support me throughout that process of just kind of sucking it up for an extra 4 years. I would do a lot of internal processing and a lot of thinking and a lot of praying and trying to figure my way. And I remember thinking one day that, God did not put me on this earth to serve this man and to sit here and feel all stifled and to please my parents and do everything right for everyone else. God put me on this earth because I have a bigger purpose. And I need to snap out of this. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself anymore. I need to snap out of this, and I need to figure out what that purpose is. And I need to make a change because enough is enough. And that was my enough is enough moment. It didn't happen overnight. I came to that realization after some time, and making that change didn't happen overnight either. I had to do a lot of prep and planning, and leave at the right time, because I knew I was in a marriage where just saying to him that I'm not happy anymore and I want to walk away was not going to be enough.
You had to have an exit strategy, didn't you?
Absolutely. I had to have that exit strategy, and it took a while to plan it. It took a while for me to get enough courage to walk away.
that nerve. I mean, because you went straight from probably just graduated from college and went into a marriage. I mean, I did the same thing. And you're like, I'm going to be jumping into a black sea that I haven't experienced yet.
Totally. Yes, that's exactly what it was. I had no idea what it was like to be married. And, we always, as girls growing up, we always have this, fairy tale fantasy of this beautiful wedding and this happily ever after. And unfortunately, that's what we're taught in society, even with all the Disney movies and everything. And not everyone has a happily ever after, but everyone is capable of creating that for themselves.
Yes.
It's when we think that other people are responsible for our happiness, that's when we set ourselves up. Yes.
Amen.
That's when we set ourselves
that out. It is an epiphany.
It totally is. Oh my goodness. When I realized that, it was like, whoa, like no one had taught me this stuff, right? And like you said, being thrown into this Black Sea, I had to either sink or swim, and I had to learn how to swim very quickly. And it's funny I'm using that analogy because in real life, I don't even physically know how to swim in water, but that's a whole nother story. But in this metaphorical life, I had to learn how to swim very quickly, otherwise I was going to sink. I had to keep my head above water for a while, just frantically trying to stay afloat, and then figure out my strokes, one by one, slowly until I could swim and navigate the waters and then find my way to shore. What I ended up doing was, I still had this career, it was a very wonderful, lucrative career, and I don't regret it one bit. Everything, in fact, that's happened, even that marriage, was a big life lesson. I don't regret any of it. And the only regrets were, why didn't I come to the realization sooner? Not why did I do that? Why did I not come to the realization sooner? Then I go back to, because everything had to happen at the pace that it happened. I had to prepare myself. I had to do a lot of internal, I call it, inner engineering work. And, coming from a very technical career, it just made sense for me to think of it that way. I was always doing technical things at the office and re-engineering things and programming, software to do things for other people. And now it was time to program everything within me to do things for me, to do things that I wanted it to do. That takes time. That takes a lot of time. And imagine being very young, starting to figure this stuff out, when years later I would talk to people in their 50s and 60s who were clients of mine, and they were just wondering how I figured all that stuff out at a very young age. And I told them it's because I was thrown into those situations. And it is a very much type of sink or swim situation. You have to figure it out on your own. I didn't have any elders to say, it's going to be okay, and let me tell you what you need to do next. I literally did it all on my own.
Trial and error.
And
you have to set an intention. I mean, if you really want it, it's trial and error and trying this and peeling the layers back. And what isn't serving, what beliefs is not getting me where I want to go, and can I let it go, and how do I let it go? And once you realize that, then you're like, okay, back when I was going through it, I didn't have any coaches. I felt like I was flailing all over the place.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels. You are literally flailing, and that's how I felt in that water. And I didn't know if I was going to make it. There were times that I would get into my own head and just be so depressed and think that I'm not going to make it. This is so difficult. And I wish someone would just come and give me a hand. And everything that I did on my own, I'm absolutely grateful for it, because it made me so strong very, very early in life. It made me a true believer of the universe and how everything happens for a reason, and how everything is every single step that we take, every single mistake that we make is going to build that little stepping stone, literally, to help us take one step after another in life. Because another analogy I like to use is like the ladder. So when you're standing on the ground and you're looking at the top rung of the ladder and you're imagining, how am I going to get up there? Like, this is imagine it's very high. How am I going to get up there? This is so high. And I just, I don't know if I have the strength, and my legs are kind of tired and they're weak. How am I going to get up there? Well, no one flies, unless you're Superman, but no one's going to fly from the bottom rung to the top rung in a second. Everyone has to take one step at a time. And that's exactly how life is. You're not going to just wave a magic wand and be where you want to be overnight. It just does not happen that way. You have to take one step at a time. And every single good or bad thing that happens in your life, the mistakes, the triumphs, the successes, the failures, the falling down, the getting up, every single thing that happens is instrumental in helping you build that foundation, because after you make the mistake and you get up and you dust yourself off and you start all over again, or start from where you left off, that ultimately is helping you build that foundation, right? And then you can stand on that foundation, and then you can look ahead to where you need to go and start taking those steps. But if you're on rocky foundation, you're just going to take one step forward and take 5 steps back, and then maybe take 2 more forward and take 10 back. And you're always going to feel like, I'm never going to get there. So it's very important to figure out how to strengthen that foundation. And that's what I do now with women, to try to empower them. But before I get into that, let me go back and finish the story of, when I realized enough is enough. My exit strategy, honestly, it sounds like a movie. And every time I tell people this story, they tell me I should make a movie out of my life, or at least that part of it. I literally had to plan an escape. And here I was, married to someone who was very controlling, very possessive, who would actually turn down business trips because he did not want to be away from me. And even if it was a 2-day trip, a weekend trip. So the opportunity was never there for me to leave, because he was always there. And I knew that I couldn't, count on anyone distracting him, because I didn't trust my family. So one day, he came home and he said, there's a business trip that they've planned for me, and I tried to get out of it, but they say that they need my expertise, and I have to fly to Texas, and I have to take care of this client, and it's only going to be 4 days. The excitement in me was unbelievable when I heard this. And I had to contain myself. Because every little thing he was suspicious about. So I was so happy on the inside, but I had to just have a straight face. And I said, okay, well, you do what you need to do, and kind of sound like I was sad about it when I wasn't. I was so thrilled. And so he, was planning on going, and I was planning, the only time I had alone, honestly, was when I was at the office. And so, here I am at the office. I've got crazy deadlines. I was a software programmer at the time, and I had just these massive deadlines working for this big law firm, and the partners would work insane hours, which meant I had to work insane hours. There wasn't a lot of time for me to sit and think through things, but when I had breaks, that's what I would be doing on my breaks. I would be doing apartment searching, and I wanted to get away. I lived in the suburbs of Virginia at the time, and I just wanted to get away. I wanted to go somewhere else, but I had never lived in another state. So the furthest I thought, of going was Washington, D.C. And so I started looking. I just started focusing on Washington, D.C. for apartments. And sometimes after work, if I managed to leave work early and the leasing office was still open at these different apartment buildings, I would make appointments to go and look at apartments. And I did this for, honestly, I had been doing this before he told me about the business trip, because I wanted to be ready. I didn't know when that opportunity would present itself, but I just wanted to be ready. So for weeks, I had been apartment hunting until I finally found an apartment that I thought would be suitable. I knew that I was going to leave my car behind and everything, so I needed it to be close to Metro so I could get around and get myself to the office fairly quickly. I looked at it. I thought, yes, this is the apartment. And now what? And they had a deal. It was Memorial Day weekend special, and I wanted to jump on it, but I had no idea if anything was going to happen. to allow me to, sign that lease because I was still living in this house and paying this mortgage. Then he comes home and tells me about the business trip. And the business trip was going to happen, I think, within a couple of weeks. And so that gave me a little bit of time to figure out how I was going to move out during that time. I'd never driven a truck. So I was thinking, okay, now I have to figure out how to drive a moving truck. And I already had so many expenses that I was looking towards, dealing with the mortgage and having to now pay a lease on an apartment. And I wanted to cut back on expenses. And again, this is me thinking I need to do all this on my own. I could have hired a moving company. Honestly, I had to be very careful about my expenses too, because it was so uncertain. I didn't know what was going to happen afterwards, how much longer I would have to hold on to the house. And it was a very, very expensive mortgage. So I went ahead and locked down the moving truck. That was reserved. When I knew that he was leaving on that business trip for sure, I contacted the leasing company, the leasing office for the apartment. And I said I was going to come and sign the lease, even though I wasn't going to be able to move in until 2 weeks later. I managed to get one friend who was a colleague of mine who knew that I was going through this and who I did trust and who was there for me to actually help me with the physical move. So at least I had that help. I was driving the truck because it was in my name. So I did that part, and he came over and brought a friend. So I'm very grateful that there were two of them to help so we could move along, much quicker. Just think, nothing was packed. Nothing could have been packed because he would have been suspicious. So I literally had to do everything like on the spot. So it took a little bit longer than it, could have, but got everything packed up and had to make multiple trips, because I didn't get a very big truck. I couldn't handle a very big truck. And so we had to make multiple trips. I couldn't take any of the furniture because I was moving into a tiny little 1-bedroom. And also the furniture was bulky and it would have just been too much to handle. We basically moved in a day and a half through everything in my apartment. I was going to deal with unpacking and setting everything up later, but I just had to go back and do last minute cleaning and touch ups, before he came home, because I think he was going to be home later that night. And I managed to just make it out of there so quickly. Went to my apartment. And I had not told my family I had done this. I had not told my friends. The only two people who knew were the two people who helped me move that day, my colleague and his friend. I went home and then I just waited for the call. And I got the call. And literally, and I knew when he was going to land, and I estimated, when he was going to be home. And I got the call like within 10 minutes. He said, "What did you do?" I was trying to mentally and emotionally prepare myself for this call, but no matter what I did, I was not prepared. I didn't know what to say. I just broke down. I started crying, and I wasn't crying because I was sad that I did it. I was crying because I was so happy that I did it. But I didn't know how to express that. And so
it's an emotional thing because it was an emotional birth for you, really.
It was so emotional, and I could not believe that I had the courage to do that. And so I just started crying, and he thought that I was sad and I had regrets, and he said, "It's okay. You can just come back." I said, "No, I'm not going to come back." I made my decision. I was not happy. I told you before that I wanted a divorce and you said no. I literally thought I was stuck there. This was the only solution. And that was to wait until you weren't there to move out. And he's like, "I can't believe you did this while I was on a business trip, and I come home and all your stuff is gone." And of course the furniture and the household things, a lot of them were still there, but there were quite a bit of things that I had taken. And, and I didn't feel bad about my decision one bit. He said, "Do your parents know?" And I said, "No, they don't. Please don't tell them. And I want to be able to tell them myself," because I knew this would be very difficult for them too. And I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to be okay. I didn't know how though. And that part somehow did not matter to me. I just knew that I was in a safe zone now, and I had my freedom, or at least I had taken that step towards true freedom for myself. And I just had this faith that everything was going to be okay, even though I didn't have it figured out. But I also felt that my parents and my soon-to-be ex were not going to be okay because they didn't see it coming. Even though I had told them over and over again that I wasn't happy, that I wanted to leave, they were all in denial. So to them, it was like, what did you do? You totally blindsided us, where I was saying, to them that, no, you've been hearing it. You've been hearing it come out of my mouth. You haven't been accepting it. You've been totally rejecting what I've been telling you all this time. And it's not new news. So that's why I thought that they wouldn't be okay. And that's why I wanted to be the ones to tell them, so that they would hear from me why I did it the way I did it. He totally did not respect that. He went, and that was the first thing he did. He called them up after he hung up with me, and he told them. He wanted them to just keep quiet about it, because he knew that he did the wrong thing immediately after he told them. And so they kept quiet, and they didn't tell me that they knew until about a month later. So that was very difficult. Even though I had left, I still felt like I had to watch, over my shoulder, and I had to be very careful about my steps, and he was watching me, and I was not paranoid one bit, because sure enough, one day I was walking home from the metro to my apartment, and his car was parked in my neighborhood, and he had somehow figured out where I lived and was following me. I say all this to say that it's very important to trust your gut instinct. And I knew very early on, from a very, very young age, that I had a very strong intuition. But this time I listened to my gut. I did not tell my parents once they figured out that I had left. And I knew that they figured out that I had left. I didn't tell them where I had moved to, because remember when I said I didn't trust them? They didn't have my back, and, I felt like they just have his side, and they don't have, they're not on my side. Sure enough, they somehow, I don't know if mail had come to the house or mail, somehow I feel like, to this day, I still don't know the answer. I try to piece it together myself, but I feel like some of my old phone bills were still coming to the house. He just went through my statement and called the numbers he didn't recognize, and came across the apartment that I eventually moved into, called the number, got the leasing agent, and Michelle Mirpour lived there. Oh, okay, great. This is the story I told myself, that he probably, this is exactly how it went down. It's kind of fun now that I repeat it, because back then I was thinking that's kind of silly, but I think this is what happened. And like I said, I won't know to this day, but I'm pretty sure something like this happened. He called the leasing office, and does Michelle Mirpour live there? Because I'm a long lost, college friend, and I want to surprise her, and what's her apartment number? And figured out exactly where I live and what my apartment number was. He not only was parked in my neighborhood, he would see me walking home from work. So he confirmed that I was there. I don't know if he ever came up to my floor. I never saw him. That would have been very creepy. But I do remember one time, and it took me 1 year before I told my parents where I live. But I remember one time when I was at my parents' house, I allowed my dad to drive me home, because up until then, I would always say, drop me off at the metro. I'll take the metro home. Even though it was far, it took me over an hour to get home. I said, that's okay. I want to just take the metro. But after 1 year, I finally told my parents where, I live, or rather I allowed my dad to drive me home. Had not told him exactly where I live yet. And I was giving him general directions, and I wasn't even at my street yet. And he said, so next I turn here, right? And I was thinking, how do you know that's where you need to turn? Because that was my street. I didn't say anything. And I was thinking, it just caught me off guard. And I was thinking that's kind of odd, And I said, yeah.
How does he know?
How does he know? And I said, yeah, turn there. And so he turned, and then he pulled up to my building. And I said, how did you know this was my building? He's like, oh, because I don't know. He made something up. I think he said, oh, because it's a really nice building, and I know you like nice things, and and I thought that's kind of weird. Like, no, this is not a coincidence. And then we got on the elevator. This is how I knew this was confirmed for me. We got on the elevator, and he pressed 8. How in the world did he know I lived on the 8th floor, right? That was crazy. That just blew my mind.
So
So
you knew that he had told them then.
absolutely. After that, I thought, okay, so not only was he following me, he was somewhere in the vicinity of my neighborhood. He wasn't parked outside of my building. He was close enough where, because I had a 15-minute walk from the metro to my apartment, and I saw him during that 15-minute walk. So it wasn't confirmed that he knew where my building was, let alone my apartment number. But after that day, when my dad pulled up in front of my building and pressed 8 and like knew where I was exactly, I started putting the pieces together. And I asked him, how did you know? And my dad didn't want to tell me, which was very uncomfortable for me because I thought, why are you hiding things from me? And, and again, it confirmed that I absolutely can't trust them. And even though I waited a whole year and I told my dad, that he could drive me home and now he knows where I live, I felt like this isn't over. I still, why did I do that? I thought a year was a long enough time and I was safe now and I was out of the, scary zone. But here's a man who's absolutely controlling and possessive, and he's stalking me now, and he refuses to sign the divorce papers. He refuses to give me my final freedom. Even though I've moved out, he's just dangling that over my head. Like, you're not free yet because I have yet to sign these papers. Is now stalking me, and my parents are hiding things from me. And this is crazy. As I was starting to trust my family, I knew that it's not safe yet. And that's when I started thinking about the story. Like maybe because I knew later it made sense. I knew some of my bills were missing, and my phone bill was, part of the missing stack, because he would hand them to my parents and then my parents would, get them to me. But some of my bills were missing. And so that's why that story that I came up with made perfect sense to me. But like I said, to this day, I'll never know. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Right. But the fact,
but that's quite an escape, like story, that you had to go to great lengths to get out of that marriage and start your journey.
Yeah. So after having gone through that, I decided that I absolutely need to be that coach. I need to be that person that I desperately needed for myself when I was going through that big change in my life, that big transition and ultimately big transformation. And I didn't want anyone else to have to go through that. I didn't want people to feel like they couldn't trust someone, or they didn't have someone helping them or guiding them through the process or helping them find their happiness, because God knows I struggled to find my happiness and figure out what I needed to do to get there and the steps that I needed to take to make it happen. And because I went through all that and I had the experience, I decided, let me start a business around this. And ultimately, my passion was born. My business was born. And I can't tell you how happy I was when I realized that that's what I was meant to do. Because remember when I said, I was not put on this earth to serve this man or make my parents happy all the time. I needed to figure out what the purpose was. But everything that was stifling me ultimately led me to find my purpose. So that's why it's so important for people to understand that it doesn't matter what we go through, as long as we learn from those lessons and we decide for ourselves to make a change if it's something that is not working for us, rather than staying stuck. So my coaching allows people to switch their mindset and figure out what it is that ultimately would make them happy, help them find their purpose, find their mission, and then coach them through the process, even if it requires, absolute hand-holding, because I know at times it's very scary. And I certainly could have, used a lot of hand-holding.
Use that.
Absolutely.
So, when you go through this, you definitely start to go, okay, well, I just did that. And you start to kind of get some momentum in the direction you want to go. And then sometimes it gives you the courage to make some other leaps. So tell us about the next leap you did when you left corporate the corporate world?
Yeah. So I was in the corporate world and doing IT for 20 years. And I started this business 16 years ago. So I was still in the corporate world. I didn't make that leap like immediately out of corporate into this business and say goodbye to corporate. Again, my plan was to slowly start building up the business and helping people that I knew that would come to me for help and wanted to make a change, and then get to the point where I would bring in other clients that weren't people who I knew, right? And I told myself, once I get to that point, then I'm at a good, comfortable point in my business where I can walk away from corporate, because then I know that other people, not just the people who know me, but other people who are now hearing about me are interested in working with me. That's when I know that this is going to be a thriving business. So it took a while. I stayed in the corporate world for many more years. I actually, I would say it was the beginning of 2016. So it's been 4.5 years now when I finally made that jump to say goodbye corporate and hello entrepreneurial world, for good. And I haven't looked back. And I'm glad I did it that way, because if I had done it any sooner, I think I would have, again, found myself flailing like, okay, this isn't working. Maybe I need to go back to corporate. I need that stable, income. I need that security. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be very firm in my decision, because I've always been one to think everything through and make a decision where I have no regrets and I don't look back. I did the same thing when I walked away from my marriage. And I did the same thing when I walked away from corporate, that I don't think everything through, but I think enough through where I feel comfortable that this is a good decision for me. So I left corporate in the beginning of 2016. And I said, I'm just going to focus on my business full time. And that ultimately opened up a lot of doors for me, because now all my focus and energy is on this business. Not to mention the fact that I don't have other work or other deadlines and other commitments, during the business day. And I was able to go, literally knock door to door on local businesses, doors in my neighborhood, and introduce myself and tell them that I do presentations and workshops and, motivational talks for people. And, I live right here in the neighborhood. I'm a small local business, and would they be interested? And within 1 month of officially walking away from corporate, I booked my first speaking engagement. And the rest of that year, I booked another dozen speaking engagements, and pretty soon I had 24, and it just became a thing where I would get calls and referrals, and people wanted to have me come in and talk to their employees in their companies. And I did a lot of corporate events. And so I was really happy to be able to spread my message and impact people on a larger scale and speak to an audience. And then the pandemic hit. And of course, anytime we have, what we think is a disaster or, a traumatic event, ultimately ends up being a blessing in disguise. And
it sure does. Yes.
Yes. And that is the type of mindset shift that I'm talking about. And I do a lot of mindset coaching, and I help people see that, see the silver lining, see the light at the end of the tunnel, see, the bright within the dark. And, like everyone says, take the lemons and turn them into lemonade. It's not just a cliche. It really does work. And so what I did in the beginning of the pandemic was, at first I was thinking, okay, so I'm going to I wasn't even thinking of doing talks online, honestly, because everything I did was in person, because I thought I need to be in front of people, right, to connect with them. So that wasn't even on my mind. But what I was thinking of doing was, okay, so I used to do a lot of organization, physical organization for people and help clear out the clutter. Well, what's stopping me from doing it online? I could do virtual sessions. And so I advertised that, and I did a little bit of that. But then I thought, I don't know why it came to me, but it did. And I'm glad it did. I thought, let me reach out to one of my corporate clients, the very last corporate client that I had worked with, and let me pitch this idea. And I just had this idea that came to me. And I said, let me pitch this idea about a webinar series and just speak to their audience, speak to their employees, speak to their clients, whoever, wants to come on, and kind of help them through the pandemic. And I could help them with motivational tips and how to, organize their workspace so they could be productive
remotely,
now that they're working from home. Yeah. How to prevent burnout and, create that work-life balance, because a lot of people were saying that they had problems with drawing a line between their work hours and then their family personal life, because now they're working at home and the lines are kind of blurred. And so, and how to avoid stress and all that. And so I did sessions like that. It was very successful. The client loved it. We had agreed to a 7-week series. The 7-week series ended. People were asking me later, what happened? We want more. We missed our Wednesdays with Michelle.
Oh, nice.
So I thought, okay, so now I can just create something like this on my own. It doesn't have to be tied to a specific client. It's going to be a lot of marketing and a lot of effort to launch something like this, but it doesn't have to be difficult. I've done it and I can do it again. And also in speaking to a lot of other people and a lot of my clients, what I started hearing over and over again was, especially female entrepreneurs, thinking, I need to get my business online. I need to do something. I need to do something like what you're doing, and I started coaching them through it. And that became a thing. That became an actual thing that they valued, taking the coaching practices that I was offering them and implementing them, creating online programs that they could launch. So what I'm focusing on now is helping, because we're still in a pandemic, right? Yes. We all had to pivot. And I believe in absolutely being flexible at all times. There's no reason to stay stuck. My mind is always working about how to be flexible and how to take what's thrown at me and how to turn it around. So I'm perfectly okay with the way my business has pivoted and taken these turns, because it's really impactful. It's helping other entrepreneurs who are feeling like, oh my gosh, unless I open up my in-person, business again, whether it's brick or mortar or consulting business, whatever they might have, unless I open that up, I'm not going to be able to make revenue. I don't want that to be a limiting belief. So I'm now helping female entrepreneurs literally take whatever gifts that they have, even if it was not something they were offering before. I'm helping them create these online businesses. And talk about transformation. My goodness, like this has been very transformative for their businesses. And ultimately they're scaling in a way that they never imagined. Just like I was thinking,
it's a wider audience online than it is brick and mortar.
Totally. And you're no longer tied to a specific geographic area. You're now impacting people in the entire country and in other countries. Think about how transformative that is for other people too, right? So this is what I feel like right now the universe is calling me to do. And it could change again. Once things settle down, it could remain the same, but ultimately this is what I'm called to do. And it's been very impactful for myself as a person. Like I'm growing my business. I'm discovering new hidden talents that I have while I'm helping other people discover their hidden talents. Once you transform your business, you transform your life, and I'm helping them understand that scalability is going to ultimately help reclaim their time and give them more freedom in their lives to be able to do what they want to do. Because once you have an online business, you can allow it to work for you and you have less time that you're spending in that business. So these are all things that are just extremely impactful. And I am so grateful for the pandemic. I know a lot of people are absolutely devastated.
Horrified.
And, my heart goes out to everyone who's lost a loved one or everyone who is dealing with, someone who's sick and going through, the COVID-19 virus. But ultimately, I feel like it has been a blessing in disguise, and it can be for anyone. If you switch your mindset and choose to believe that there's a lot of good that can come from this period, because I'm living proof that it can. Obviously, a lot of people have pivoted and been able to do wonderful things during the pandemic. pandemic.
Absolutely. I've seen so many stories of people who, instead of taking the whole chaotic situation, turning it into demise or panic, or they're wringing their hands, and instead they're finding it as a grounds of being able to recreate themselves and their business. And like sometimes when you have problems, then you actually come up with a better solution than you had before you had the problem.
Oh,
Right?
totally. Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Because without problems, there won't be solutions, right? We have to have
Right.
problems.
Right. It's like Edison, we're in the dark. So he helped us have light,
Yes.
right? And it transformed our lives, right?
Perfect example. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I know the listeners, if they're just as curious as I am, you had mentioned that one point in your life, you decided on Christmas Day, your Christmas present to yourself
Yes.
was a trip, one-way ticket to India.
So I decided that I'm going to start living life, like truly living life. And as I mentioned, I felt very stifled, growing up in the household, with my family. And again, being with an ex-husband who was absolutely controlling. I couldn't go anywhere, unless it was with him. And we didn't travel much because he was always working. And I thought, you know what? I need to get out there and see the world, because there's this huge world out there, and it would be a shame if I was just stuck in one place. I have the freedom now. At the time I was still in the corporate world, but I was laid off from my job. And I said, why not? I never had the opportunity to take a gap year. Like a lot of, kids do. And, I had to grow up very quickly. I got married very young and had all these responsibilities, and then had to deal with a divorce. And I'm going to treat myself, and I'm going to do this trip. And I decided India. Why? Because I thought they were a very colorful culture. I live my life in color. Color makes me happy. I didn't know exactly where I was going to land after India. I just knew that while I'm in that, part of the world, I could probably see a few other countries in Southeast Asia. So I made a rough list of other countries that I could potentially see. I was just going to take my time. So I booked a one-way ticket on Christmas Day. I flew out the very next day.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was the most spontaneous I have ever been. I just remember my dad asking, when are you going to be back? And I said, I don't know, I'll probably be gone for 2 to 3 months. And he said, 2 to 3 months? Are you kidding me? I thought you were going to say 2 to 3 weeks. I said, oh no, Dad, I've got all these countries that I want to visit. I need some time. So I left, I went to yoga ashrams. And when I was in the south of India, people told me about silent meditation. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Where's that? Where can I get some of that? And they told me about a few places. And then, I was traveling to the northern part of India, and I researched where I could go to a silent meditation retreat there. And I ended up there, and that was just life-changing. Let me tell you, to do an 8-day silent meditation retreat where you are in complete silence. And when they say silent, they mean silent. You are not to come into contact with anyone. You check in your devices at the door, and it's locked up in their office. You have no reading or writing materials. You have absolutely nothing, no cameras, nothing at all, except the clothes on your back, literally. You meditate all day long. You have breaks for meals. No one makes eye contact. Everyone is just doing their own thing. It was crazy when I started it, because I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this 8 days? That's a long time. And I remember posting something on Facebook and telling my friends, just so you all know, I'm in this part of India now, and I'm going to go into silent meditation, and it's going to be for over a week, and love to talk. And I remember everyone saying, good luck with that.
Get some duct tape.
Yeah, exactly. How are you going to manage that? But I said, I love a good challenge, and I'm going to take it on. And the first 2 nights, I had nightmares, and I don't have nightmares.
Wow.
And it's because you don't have any distractions. When you're in silence and you're meditating, You have absolutely no distractions. You have no devices. You have no people talking to you. You have no TV running, no radio running. You have no internet. You have no distractions. All you have is you and your mind. And because you're forced to deal with that, a lot of things start coming up, right? So a lot of things were bubbling up in the form of nightmares. I was just thinking, like, is this real? Like, where am I? And I was just in this alternate universe. And I just remember, when I was having those nightmares, they just seemed so real. And a lot of things were happening, right? I just knew that I had to let it happen. But on the third day, I had no nightmares. And the rest of it was so easy. It's as if I faced all my fears. I accepted everything that was coming up, all the emotions, everything from my past. I let it all bubble up to the surface. I let it go. I was so at peace. It was incredible. I surprised myself because I was able to meditate more peacefully, and it wasn't as uncomfortable sitting for long periods of silence like it was before. And I just felt so content. Like, I would have never thought that I would have been that content sitting still. I just knew that everything in life was beautiful and everything in life was just perfect the way it was meant to be. After that, I was never the same person again. I mean, I had already gone through a lot of change, a lot of transformation. Just when I thought I've had enough change and transformation to last me a lifetime.
There's more.
There's more, because this is life. And the universe loves us and loves dishing up all this stuff, because without change and without adversity and without problems and challenges, how are we going to grow? I went through all of that. Long story short, my journey ended up not being 2 or 3 weeks. I ended up coming back home to the States 8 months later.
Wow.
Completely transformed, I felt like I was reborn. I came back with a whole new perspective. I was so much more calm and relaxed, and I felt like I had certain tools that I could always reach for when I needed some help in some areas. And, and I ended up becoming certified in yoga and Reiki energy healing and clearing and all, it seemed like the natural thing for me to do. I need these tools for myself, but more importantly, I need them to help others. Now I use all of those tools in my coaching practice. If we need to do some kind of clearing when we're doing mindset exercises, then we'll start with some clearing exercises. Essentially, it's really important to understand where you are and what you need help with, and not be afraid to ask for help. And while I did a lot of things on my own, I don't want that to be the case for other people going through similar things.
Faster, I mean, so you don't have to trial and error. And, once you get to the point that, you want everybody to have this feeling too, and not have to strip your entire life down to the raw to start back over again. Start now.
Yes.
Right. To start now, create your happy now.
Totally. Yeah. Start now. Don't spend any more time thinking about how. Work with someone who's already been through it, someone who can help you and guide you and teach you, because not everyone is going to have the same experience. But when you draw upon other people's experiences, and especially if someone does have similar experiences to what you're dealing with, that could be particularly useful. But even when they don't have the same experiences, you could always draw from those experiences. And it's very important. I always say, like, all successful people, truly successful people in this world, have always had a coach and a mentor. And sometimes the coach is their mentor and vice versa. And sometimes it's two different people, but everyone has had someone to lean on, someone who can guide them through.
Without judgment.
Yeah. Without judgment. Totally.
Yeah.
That's key.
Which is totally, like, I think what a lot of people are fearful to go to family or friends because they're afraid of that judgment. I think that's what people are afraid of. And a coach is there to just kind of bring it all out into the open, put all your cards on the table, and let's see how we're going to, start playing the game, and create the life that you've always dreamed of.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what the listeners can do to work with you. Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like it's always important to just start a conversation, even if you don't know where it's going to head. Start a conversation and figure out if you are ready for a coach. Because I always say not everyone, well, a lot of people might need a coach. Not everyone is coachable yet, right? Yet. Sometimes it takes them a while to get to the place where they truly feel like enough is enough. Enough is enough. Yes. I can't deal with this on my own anymore. I don't want to deal with this anymore on my own. I want change. I don't know how to make it happen. I need a coach.
I'll try anything.
Yes. I've tried so many things. It's not working. It's time to call in a professional. I need a coach to help me and guide me. So that's when I know someone is coachable, when they reach that stage. I'd like to offer anyone listening a free 30-minute call with me just to figure out if that's something that they're ready to introduce into their life. If they've had enough, if they've truly had enough and they want to make a change, whether it's in their life, their mindset, their business, whatever it is, because it all ultimately starts with a decision. And we start everything with figuring out where you are, right? Start that transformation journey that you've been putting off. Because once you start transforming, you honestly, I know I felt this way, you honestly are going to ask yourself, why did I not start this sooner? Why did I wait this long? but I still like to encourage people, starting now is better than, don't worry about yesterday. I should have started this yesterday or 2 years ago. Don't worry about that. We are in the now. We're in the present moment. So starting this now is better than putting it off for another year or two. If you want real transformation and real change and you've had enough, then, it's as simple as just starting a conversation, and you'd be surprised where you end up. So,
and where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on my website. So it's www.organized with a D on the end, lifebymichelle.com.
Great. Awesome. And do you have a quote that you really like to live by, or something that you'd like to share with the listeners today?
Yeah. I really like the quote by Mahatma Gandhi, which is, and I'm not quoting him specifically, but be the change that you wish to see in the world. So I always tell people that it starts with you, right? If you want to see change around you, then it always starts with you. And what that means is mindset and perspective. So it's really important to shift that mindset and perspective and how you see the world and how you see other people around you, because ultimately that's going to change your entire world.
So is that kind of like a good happy hack that you want to offer the listeners, maybe a tool or tip that they can try today, that they can apply and start today with their, creating their happy now?
I think what would be a fun exercise would be to sit down and answer a couple of questions. So each person can ask, am I truly, truly happy? And am I living my purpose? And if the answer is no to either one of those, then they need to make a decision. What am I going to do about it? What's the next step? Am I going to talk to someone about it? Am I going to sit and think about what it's going to take to make me happy? Do I even know what that looks like? But it starts with those questions, because I feel like we need to understand where we are in order to figure out where we want to go.
Right. I remember sitting at a point where I didn't even know what I liked anymore. And, when you realize you kind of lost yourself in the life that we've been expected to live, that you're lost, and you realize something's got to give. And if you're ready for a change, then you've got to know it's time to take those steps. I wish I had had a coach a long time ago. And like you said, be coachable, be coachable.
Absolutely.
So I encourage everybody to, just whether you reach out to Michelle or a friend or another coach, definitely have that talk. Make a decision today. Where are you at, and where do you want to go?
Absolutely. Don't stay stuck, because life is way too short to not be happy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me today. And I look forward to having you again on the show. And definitely reach out to her at www.organizedbymichelle.com. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was organizedlifebymichelle.com.
Oh, Organized Life by Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to episode 17 with Michelle Mirpour. Please make sure to visit her at www.organizedlifebymichelle.com to schedule your free 30-minute transformational journey call. If you'd like today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review, and you can get a free meditation by yours truly by going to the link in the episode description as my thanks to you. Catch Create Happy Now on YouTube with podcast recordings and additional videos. Keep a lookout for Create Happy Now Facebook group, courses, books, and more. If you would like to stay on top of Create Happy Now creations, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel so you can start your journey to Create Happy Now. You can also find Create Happy Now on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, Stitcher, Deezer, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio.